My name is Lisa Galecki, and I'm the Digital Media and Marketing Specialist with Apex Alberta and Tourism Medicine Hat. And joined together with me here today is Lane Anderson from London Road Media. London Road Media is a digital and social media marketing agency, firm. What's the preferred term?
We say firm, but
firm?
Yeah, it's common. Most people say agency, but technically we like to say firm.
And so I'll turn this over to you, Lane, for introduction, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So we're next Monday is our 5th birthday with London Road Media. So we've been around that long now, and definitely we're a company that started out as content marketing, especially heavily into social media and blog production and video production and that kind of media production type of stuff. But it really evolved into that full service marketing firm where we partner with small and medium businesses across the country and just become that like an external marketing department to do everything that they need. And so not just the execution of services, but also that sort of executive level advising and sort of taking ownership of their marketing and leading and guiding and figuring out what we need to do best with the budget that they have. So that advising and overseeing and all of that in addition to the execution of the services. So that full service out of house marketing department, partnering with Canadian SMBs, that's who we are. So next week being our 5th birthday, we are doing a name change to London Road Marketing just because London Road Media is not very reflective of where we are now. So we've got all this rebrand stuff coming out. So we will be London Road Marketing. And yeah, firm being, we're a group of specialists that can provide a bunch of different services where technically an agency is, each person is almost their own business within an agency, kind of like real estate, like each agent is their own business. So even though lots of people say marketing agency, I think that we like firm.
Perfect. And so I think that segues well into where now this is technically episode 12 of our 12-part series of Facebook Fundamentals with you. And I think that it was very timely. Part of the reason we decided to do this was, of course, because of COVID and everyone's move completely into the digital space and the amplification we've seen there. And so it seemed timely to have this course again. And it was needed, I think, for a lot of specifically small businesses who are either starting or had to make dramatic changes and move into the digital space. And so that's what brought us here. So going right back to the beginning to how, now, and wow, and, some of those thoughts around creating content all the way through to Facebook advertising and then ending off with social selling. I think it would be great to do a bit of a recap. And then to those who are in attendance here with us this morning, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. That would be wonderful. So, one of the first questions or sort of thoughts I have as you were speaking about the switch from media to marketing, and that word content creation or content creators and all of that really goes into they're also connected. They're definitely discrete in a sense, but there's marketing, there's media, and then there's the making of the content. And I feel like in a way, our series has sort of taken us through those three pieces. And so maybe we'll start at the beginning and talk a little bit about content and going back to that how, now, and wow. And what are some of the things that you're seeing small businesses do that's sort of catching your attention and you think is working well?
Yeah. It seems like right now, and I think we did mention this kind of in the first couple episodes where it was based on that first seminar, where we talked about how small to medium businesses are really showing that they are local small businesses and the people behind them, and they're in the community, and it's not quite that plea for like, please help us, but there is that, we are part of this community, we support others, you support us. And so I actually see a lot of small businesses, even when they're the ones who might be in a position of struggling right now, that they're actually being very selfless and supporting others. And then that's just building up everyone. So I know just last week I received a book from the local like menswear retailer in town who I know them well enough because I always shop there, and I like that store, and he just sent me a book in the mail that's just like, here's a menswear book, just thought you would enjoy it, and it was totally unsolicited. Now I don't think that they're struggling, but I'm sure that their sales are not what they were a year ago, and their retail traffic is going to be down. But he had bought the book at the local bookstore across the street from him. He bought the card at the local gift shop that's across the street. He's like just doing everything he can to show that he's supporting local. Please support us too. And so I think I've seen a lot of that where small businesses are supporting other small businesses and just all sort of rallying together. And that's been great in terms of content, is that it's all about this community building. And you've got built-in supporters when you do that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely that sense of place, like you say, community, and pride of place, I think, to being not. Yes, there's a lot of hardship, and it's been very particularly difficult on small businesses, but they haven't really allowed that to stop them. They seem to, the word, I guess, that's always getting used is resilience, but I think that they've certainly done that. And then it seems, and I think it makes sense to talk about it in terms of content creation, but there's this great opportunity, and I think many businesses are capitalizing on it, to tell their story. And part of that story is that it's made here or it's local, and what that means and what that looks like for them. And so if I could ask you to talk a little bit about storytelling in relation to content.
Sure, I'd love to. I think storytelling is such a powerful way to use social media. So my background, I had an English degree, and especially in literature, and then a lot of it was in workshopping and creative writing. So that's my background, and I find it to be really valuable. Storytelling means that there has to be a narrative to it. It's not just here's a snapshot of a behind the scenes photo, or there's actually some story. And we see that especially effective in places like LinkedIn, where people talk about their origin story, or a moment of transformation in their career, or there's always these big stories that people reveal, and those posts go viral. And people just love reading a story. But we see that a lot. And stories have a way of connecting a message with the audience in a way that just telling that message directly doesn't have that impact. So if we think of back to Aesop's fables as some of the oldest stories out there, and we think of the boy who cried wolf or something, you hear the story and everyone knows the story, and then because the story is memorable, you remember what the point of the story is and the lesson is, which is don't lie too much, or people are not going to believe you when it's actually real. That's the story that you remember because you remember the story. But if Aesop's fable wasn't written and it was just a piece of wisdom or philosophy that was written that just said don't lie too much or people won't believe you when it's real, that's not memorable. You just said the message directly, and people are like, oh, thanks, that's nice, you're right, and then it just disappears from your mind. But when you deliver it through story, it's so much more impactful. You remember it, you can recall it, and it just hits deeper. It just gets internalized and can be recalled again later, and it just has a better impact. So that's how, in my mind, that's how story really works well in social media. That's why I loved studying story through my post-secondary experience, because to me, story and literature is basically a study of philosophy, but through stories. That's what literature really is. And you can do the same thing in your marketing. Here's a message, you could just say it directly, here, come here to buy this thing, or you can tell a story, and now people will remember it.
And I think I love this, and I know that it's used a few times over now, but that how, now, and wow. And I know I keep coming back to it, but I think for those who are just starting out with their social media, I guess the life of their business on social media, that is a great and easy access, I shouldn't say easy, but certainly accessible inroad to content creation. So when you're thinking about that storied experience, looking at it from the perspectives of either how do I do this, or how do you do this, and telling the story behind the product or the experience, the now, what's happening now, and then of course the wow. So what's really special, unique, or different about what we do, or how we do it, or the sort of the range of services or experiences provided by the business owner. And so I think against that backdrop of the description of story and narrative that you were giving, coming back to that first lesson that you provided, I think those two go really well together. And so for those business owners who are just getting started and going, okay, I understand all of this, I understand that story makes sense, but how do I do it? I think going back to that first episode that you did for us, Lane, that how, now, and wow is a very simple inroad to getting into storytelling. And then my next question for you is, if you were just to give some tips when crafting your story, thinking about that, is it a how, now, or wow? And then what would you, is there a tip or something that you would say, like some extra layer that's really easy and basic that you might add on to that?
I think, yeah, it depends on which angle you're going with it. Like there's a few things that you would kind of, I guess, apply as another ingredient in that to make it really valuable. One is just that it has, like, if it's quite unique, then it's going to be more special. So if your story is an extremely common one, that's not that interesting to people. Like if it's just like, oh, that's everyone's experience, well, then that's not as interesting. So if it's unique, then you want to make sure that you emphasize the uniqueness of that story. If it's highly relatable, I mean, that's always going to hit really well. We see that again on posts, like I'm just thinking of these LinkedIn ones as examples, but where people would create these posts and it's just this very relatable experience. And there's of course a whole segment of people that's not at all relatable to, but you know, for me, like I'm here, I got 2 kids at home, and so if one of them like wanders into this shot, it's like that's a relatable experience. And if you talk about that in a post, like people who have kids and are working from home are like, oh my God, yes, exactly, that's so me, and that's so relatable. And so that kind of like making it highly relatable will just really hit to that segment of people who are listening to it. When it's how based stuff, it's about making it again like unique and rare, so it's not just regurgitating like the most common advice out there, which you see a lot of. It's just like, here's this tip, and you're like, yeah, I've seen that tip in 500 different videos and 1,000 different blogs. Like this is not new information. So that uniqueness in your tips and your how based content, but especially when it's I've talked a lot about how sharing kind of the unpopular opinion as far as getting engagement works extremely well when it's those how type of posts. And that doesn't mean like being controversial or stirring the pot. It just means there's this established like status quo understanding of how things work. But you as an expert in what you know can come in and kind of disrupt that and be like, well, actually, like I know that everyone thinks this, but our experience has been this. And everyone's like, oh, wow, like that's different than what I've been hearing. So people saying, you know, social media is dead, or organic reach is dead, and you have to pay to play and all this. And that's kind of, you know, the status quo understanding of how organic social media works right now, and that your reach is going to be 5% of your audience or something like that. And and then we'll make a post that says, you know, looking back over this last quarter with this client, our average reach is actually like 85%, and we're getting enormous engagements, and like here's our numbers, and this is why, is because we approach it this way. And that kind of unpopular opinion where you say, well, it's not that organic reach is dead, it's just that people's content is really bad. Well, that can get a lot of engagement. So that is another like layer ingredient to add that's going to really help.
So on that, how do you approach engaging with your audience? So, and maybe I'll just leave it as a really open question. How do you approach that? And do you have any tips for that?
So the platforms that we are on for our own business, it's mostly people coming and engaging with us and then on our content. And then, yes, I definitely want to continue the conversation and have dialogues in the posts and things like that. If you are active if you're using Twitter, if you're using Instagram, and there is no like hierarchy between personal accounts and page accounts like there is on Facebook or LinkedIn, which are the two that we kind of invest in. Everyone's just on that equal playing field where you're just an account. You're just in the mix with everyone else. There's no difference between a personal page or a business page. And when you're in that situation, like you as the business page actually follows other people and engages with other people. And it's possible, it's technically something you can do with your Facebook page, but just it's not how people use the platform. But on Instagram and Twitter, you do. You're there as a user, as your business, and you're out there engaging with others. So I think that's one thing that we do for our clients that are on those platforms is definitely being proactive about going out and engaging with others, not just posting things and hoping they come to us and engage and then we can have a conversation in the comments, but that we would proactively go out and engage. And especially with new accounts that we're trying to build, we're following people that are very relevant to us, not just mass following and then unfollowing to try and get followers, but actually going out and following people who are local, who are influential, who are people who we want to see in our feed, and then liking their stuff, leaving actual thoughtful comments, not just like, love this post, have a great day, like actually engaging in a meaningful way. And sometimes it leads to nothing. Lots of times it leads to nothing. They just will get a notification, see your name, and that's as far as it goes. But at least there's like that touch point and a little bit of awareness. But sometimes it leads to the conversation. It leads to them replying in a comment and a dialogue happening, or it is just keeping that top of mind. And there's a number of businesses in this town that I might follow now because they're just commenting on my things and engaging, and I'm just very hyper aware of them. So the next time I go out to eat, I think of that restaurant because they've been engaging with my content. And so being proactive about engagement and going out as a user, as an audience member, and consuming other people's content is a really important and often missed piece of running social media for business. But like I said, Facebook and LinkedIn is a bit of a different story because pages kind of just post stuff and wait for people to come to them. But Instagram and Twitter are a totally different experience in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to kind of highlight. And even especially for those who are just starting out and trying to find their feet within the social media space, not just focusing only on creating your own content, but also thinking about how much time you might spend and effort you might put in to being aware of others' content and interacting meaningfully with that, and doing that relationship building. So whether that's B2C, business to customer or business to business, those can be really those powerful strategies. And I think that sort of brings us through to the social selling, which is what we talked about, or you talked about last in the course, and some of the pieces to that. And the thing that keeps sticking in my mind is how in a digital space, that social selling piece in many ways comes down to customer service online. And when you can't have that experience in person in a store, and you're particularly just completely online, how you do that social selling piece really is that awareness and acquisition, but also customer service and the taking care of things after the purchase is made as well, and being there.
Yes. So usually like marketing and sales are these two very different things, because sales is about, let's get this one person to go all the way from currently not a customer to being a customer, like take one person 100% of the way. And marketing is about talking to a whole group of people, and not to take any one of them from 0 to 100%, but like take all of them and nudge them all up 5%. Like that's what marketing does, make it a little bit more likely for this whole group of people to become a customer. So some people who are sitting at 95%, they see this one extra marketing piece and like, yep, that's the thing that makes me sell. But some people are at 10% and it just made them a little more likely, and it's going to take 6 more months of marketing to keep bumping them forward. Like it's kind of that mass nudge versus this like targeted push all the way to being a customer. That's where social media though has bridged these a lot, because now you can have the one-to-one. Like I can interact directly as a business with one consumer and talk to them and have a back and forth. It's not just publishing as the big publisher in a hierarchy and then there's the audience below, as it would be in TV or in radio or in print or billboards or whatever it is, where you just publish it and they consume it, but there's no mechanism for them to like connect back.
Dialogue. Yeah.
But that's what social media enabled. And so now it's not just, it can also do the mass market and talk to everyone, but it can also do that one-to-one selling. So that's what has changed a lot is that ability to do that. And that's where this tactic of social selling is a little bit more of a sales tactic than it is a marketing tactic. But and even beyond sales, it's the customer service and the operations. And so we see that with Twitter accounts like WestJet, who I think last I checked, it says right in their bio that just says like they are basically the customer support line for people. Like just tweet at them. that's what they're there to do. And so that is a way that it can be used.
And that's an interesting strategy in that you might, and this is a conversation I often have with small business owners, and especially more recently where they have moved online and they're going, okay, I have these 3 accounts. I think I need all 3, but how do I use each one? And designating a use for them, but having it be integrated in the whole. And so I think that even, that idea of maybe using Twitter as a customer service line, if it's appropriate. And also there's a lot of work that goes into that and having to be aware of it. So that may not be ideal for everyone, but in some cases could work well.
Yeah, for small business, it's great when the business owner is still involved in running their own social media because they can be that. Like the Facebook message comes in or the Instagram message or whatever, and they can respond to it directly and they can check the sale date and they can see when it was shipped and like they can help you now. And so that's what I love about small business in social media is they're equipped to do social media far better than large organizations are. And that's where a lot of small, medium businesses, they look to like the big enterprise and like, wow, this is how they do it. Like we should emulate them. No, like they usually don't do a very good job of it because they're too big. It's actually really hard for them to use social media effectively. Small business owners have a massive like opportunity or advantage in social media because they can be direct. They're small. They have real relationships with people. They have like there's a relationship behind that DM. Not just this mass, one of a million customers. So there's actually a huge advantage there. And so that's why we often advise small businesses to run their own social media. We do very little social media management for small businesses anymore because you can just do a better job yourself. You would have to be in there behind the scenes every day to be able to do as good of a job as you can. So I highly advise small businesses to do their own social media. If they need some help with some content creation, maybe you can reach out for help with that. But I really advise small business owners to do their own social media. My experience at running it at an enterprise level, I ran the North American social media accounts for PokerStars for 4 years under London Roads. And that is an example of where we're trying to be a content channel and create things for people, but to the audience, we're a support line. Like they will engage with our content, but when they have a problem, they're tweeting at us or they're sending us Facebook DMs. And so we had a very elaborate process behind the scenes where it's like, well, this tweet came in complaining about this, so you have to flag like the sentiment of it. Was it positive or negative or neutral? Now, who do we assign it to? Oh, it goes to this customer support team in this state or whatever. And like, there's this whole system behind the scenes and it just gets so complicated and is why small businesses have a huge advantage that they can just do that naturally, organically, because they're small and reactive and agile. And you can do a far better job than every enterprise brand out there.
I think that is such a great point to end this conversation on, because I think that I know a lot of the conversations I have with small businesses, they often feel the exact opposite to what you've just said. And so I really hope that they can hear that message, that really they are in the best position to run their social media and make the decisions about their social media accounts and how they interact, and that because they are in possession of that knowledge, and they're just so uniquely integrated throughout their business entirely. Like it is usually the way it is. So that's a really wonderful, I think, an important point for small businesses to hear, especially those who are starting out and might feel like, oh, I don't necessarily feel equipped for this, and but they are. And so the other thing, I think, just to end, I kind of want to mention just some highlights for me and takeaways that I found personally this course was really helpful. There's some really great basic tips throughout. And one of the other things that you talked about early on was that social, particularly with Facebook, it is a cheap advertising option, but not a free advertising option. And I think that was a really lovely point. And going back to content, making sure that when you're advertising, that you are utilizing that Facebook ads and running campaigns, because they're powerful. And it also helps to declutter your page and keep your content really on point and not overly salesy. So I think that was another really strong takeaway for me. And then going through the whole Facebook ads sections, those three pieces in the middle there, I thought this is a really great way that if you've never run a Facebook ad before, you know nothing about it, this is an easy start. You can start here. You can do this. And you said it several times, but it's like testing is the process. So you iterate, you try something, you try it again, and you improve as you go. So you don't need to feel locked into, oh, if it's not perfect this time, then it's never going to be perfect. It's more of that total iteration.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just coming back to the comment you just made, I think about small businesses and really how uniquely positioned they are to do social media and do it so well. I really hope that's a message that our small businesses can hear. So thank you so much, Lane, as always. It is a great and super quick 30 minutes with you. I can't believe the time is gone. We appreciate you spending your time with us here this morning. I'm going to keep you for one more minute. I don't see any questions coming through, but if anyone does have a question, please put it in the chat in the next minute or so. And so happy 5th anniversary for now London Road Marketing.
Yes.
That's very
exciting. You heard it here first. It comes out next week. Yeah, our designer is still putting the final touches on new logo and branding stuff. So it'll be right down to the wire before, because I'm our own worst client. My standards are higher than any of our client standards. So my team hates me right now for all the work that I'm like, oh, it's not quite right. That's going to be beautiful though.
Well, that's all that counts. Well, we're looking really forward to seeing that, and we'll be looking out for that soon. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being a part of Facebook Fundamentals. You have been just a fantastic resource. So we appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, well, take care.
Okay, thank you.